Or paid about $927 a month for groceries. At the height of inflation in 2022, the average was $1,307 a month. That's $400 more a month. Now, that has started to come down, actually, in real terms. The average at the end of last year was around $1,261, but again, still up from 2020. And the experience of paying more and more and feeling like prices are out of control and feeling squeezed translates to disaffection. And that disaffection is probably the single biggest advantage you can have as, say, the challenger to an incumbent president operating in a world in which prices have gone. And yet, the Republican challenger, President Biden, isn't running on lowering prices. He's actually running on jacking up prices on a huge amount of the goods we use every day. And I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but genuinely, and I want to be clear here, his core economic policy proposal right now is an across-the-board consumer sales tax for every single good imported into the United States. Now, he may call it a tariff, but it will just be passed along to consumers in a sales tax on every single good that is imported. And again, you do not need to take my word for it. Just listen to Donald Trump himself.
Number one, I think we should have a ring around the collar, as they say. I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically, let's say, a 10% tax.
I'm a big believer in tariffs for two reasons. Number one, I fully believe in them economically when you're being taken advantage of by other countries. I would say to China, if you're building a plant on our border to build cars in Mexico and to sell them into the United States, I'm putting a 50% tariff on all those cars.
You used tariffs and sanctions against China.
I did, and I did very well with it. As you know, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes through the taxes and tariffs.
Is that what you want to do again?
Well, you have to do it.
Okay, if you are a single issue inflation voter, there is only one candidate who wants to put a 10% tax that will be passed along to consumers as a sales tax on every single good that's imported. And here's the thing, this is not a hypothetical. Trump did a miniature version of this the last time he was president when he put tariffs on different Chinese goods. Here's how that worked out. According to analysis by the New York Fed, the average import tariff rate more than doubled in 2018 alone. It tangibly led to higher domestic consumer prices. Take the first two tariffs on washing machines and steel. Economists found that consumer prices for washing machines, which have been going down steadily since 2012, almost immediately jumped back up after Trump's tariffs. In fact, the New York Times found that the washer-specific tariffs raised costs for importers like LG and Samsung. The steel import tariffs raised costs for some domestic manufacturers like Whirlpool, pushing prices up for consumers. Now Trump wants to do it again, but bigger, okay? Now, American manufacturing, there's some argument on the other side of it, but in the short term,
Hello and welcome to Exposed News Outlet. My name is Andrea and I'll be your host. Before we get started, I would like to ask if you could please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure to check the notification bell for all the latest updates on all my latest videos. Also, if you could please like and share this video, it'll help to get my video out to the masses, and it's really important, especially right now before election. So thank you. And without further ado, I'd like to get into the video. I wanted to start off, I wanted to play a clip of Hitler at Madison Square Garden where he spoke in 1939, and I'm actually going to compare it to what Trump has been repeating and saying in all of his speeches, and again today, Sunday, as he had an unhinged rant and very Nazi-like terminology as well. Mussolini, all of the dictators use the same terminology and almost verbatim. So let me go ahead and play the clip.
This rally at Madison Square Garden comes days after his own former chief of staff went on record to describe his former boss as a fascist. But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling Because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the Garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism. Joining me now, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, history professor at New York University and author of Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present. And Anne Applebaum, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, staff writer at The Atlantic, and author of Autocracy, Inc., The Dictators Who Want to Run the World. I cannot wait to have this conversation with both of you. And Ruth, thank you both very much for being here. Ruth, since you are not at the table, let me start with you and just talk to us about the parallels that we're seeing between 1939, that rally at Madison Square Garden, and the rally we're seeing right now at Madison Square Garden, and the rhetoric that's already coming out of this rally.
Yeah, of course, this is not a casual choice to have it there. And although Donald Trump objects strenuously to people comparing him to Hitler, he is the one who has gone out of his way to use Nazi rhetoric, talking about polluting our blood, calling people vermin, even releasing a campaign ad that says he's going to create a unified Reich in America. And of course, as General Kelly said, complaining that, generals should be obeying him like Hitler's generals obeyed the Fuhrer. So this is not at all casual. I want to make a comment about what Von Hilliard was talking about. Trump has been using his rallies since 2015 to radicalize people, to incite violence, to kind of loosen people's inhibitions against violence.
Wir versprechen Ihnen, dass wir die Kommunisten, Marxisten, Faschisten und die linksradikalen Verbrecher, die wie Ungeziefer in unserem Land leben, ausrotten werden. Aber wir holen sie nicht aus den verseuchten Ländern. Ich weiß nicht, ob man sie Menschen nennen kann. In einigen Fällen sind es meiner Meinung nach keine Menschen, sondern Tiere. Sie vergiften das Blut unseres Landes. Wir werden die größte Abschiebeaktion durchführen. Wenn ich nicht gewählt werde, wird es ein Blutbad geben. Ich bin eure Vergeltung. Ich möchte nur einen Tag lang Diktator sein.
It's important to note and to understand the full scope, and that Democrats aren't just misleading or being alarmists. This isn't hyperbole, it's actually a fact. So we're actually speaking hard facts and trying to prevent history from repeating itself. Since as early as October 14th, if not earlier, Trump has been using the enemy from within, quote, as he refers to his political opponents and anyone that opposes his agenda and his evil racism, xenophobia, and discrimination. This enemy from within rhetoric is exactly how Hitler spoke verbatim. Fast forward to today, October 28th, when Trump and the MAGA cultists took to the stage insulting Black, brown, and LGBTQ Americans, and Trump once again doubled down on propaganda and lies. Dangerous rhetoric, literally copying the speech Hitler gave in 1939 in the same arena. Literally verbatim, the same lies, accusing the left of fascism, which is literally a far right definition. It's a far right authoritarian dictatorship, which is exactly what Trump stands for. He's trying to use deflection and trying to confuse people. So when we use the words, people will think, oh, they're just calling each other this. And most of them won't even look up what the word means. A lot of people don't even know what it means. And if you look it up, it's literally a far right authoritarian dictatorship. He continues to promise the mass deportations on day one, which not only is that very racist and xenophobic, but it's also un-American, as this country was founded and built on immigration. And it's also really dangerous, and for the economy, it could actually bring us to a recession and possibly collapse by next year, as economists have said, between his deportations and his national sales tax, which he, calls these tariffs and acts like it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. He tells people that the foreign countries will pay for it, but really it's American consumers that pay for that. And more at each rally, it's more obvious the blatant white nationalist groups that are actually showing up in numbers. A lot of them showing the 1488 emblem, which is a known white nationalist symbol. It also has been making his audience more uncomfortable, visibly uncomfortable, as, not all of them are these blatant racists or fascists. So I think a lot of them are waking up to it once they see it for themselves, hopefully. Others are just numb to it, I guess. Or, they're all in. I don't know. It's pretty sad. Trump then promises that he'll enact the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798 as the whole crowd clapped like a bunch of trained seals. I want to let everybody know this Alien and Sedition Act of 1798, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what it is, but the Alien Sedition Act of 1798 was enacted during a dark authoritarian time in history when things were a lot different. It literally terminates our constitutional rights and limits or kills freedom of speech and freedom of press. So this isn't a good thing at all. They can use extra constitutional powers is what J.D. Vance brags and totes. It's basically violating our rights, as the Constitution is literally our protections and freedoms. So they can literally do whatever they want at that point once they kill the freedom of press, and we won't even know. That also kills the freedom of speech and freedom of press. Would basically we wouldn't know what was going on while they're doing all this, basically. As Trump, in a deranged speech, has called for a day of purging, like we're in a horror movie of some sorts. He started off as an hour of very rough purging. He's, talked about longer than an hour. He's just unhinged and deranged as he threatens very dark and evil rhetoric on the American people, which is, against what this country stands for and in all aspects. He's also been given immunity, absolute immunity, by this rogue Supreme Court. So if he does commit these heinous acts, he would essentially be immune from prosecution, which is very alarming. And it's another reason why we have to make sure that we come out in masses and vote for Kamala Harris, as she has plans for us and he has plans for himself. She'll check off her to-do list, or he would be in there stewing over his enemies list. Quite the contrast there. And sadly, the Supreme Court issued this immunity at a time when his own advisors have been breaking the norm and coming out and telling the public that Trump is literally a fascist. His own chief of staff, John Kelly, was the latest one to come out on the record and tell us that Trump is indeed a fascist. General Mark Milley also came out and said that Trump is fascist to the core, and even praised Hitler, said that he wanted generals like Hitler had.
Now, just hours after that release of the new reporting from The Atlantic came out yesterday, a second bombshell. And it is exactly what Sarah Longwell spoke about in that clip. Retired Marine General John Kelly, who served as Donald Trump's chief of staff for a year and a half, in his own words on tape, sounding all of the alarms about Donald Trump's lack of character and basic fitness for the office. John Kelly sat down for 3 on-the-record interviews with New York Times reporter Mike Schmidt. Each answer that he gives is stunning on its own, but taken together, that composite paints an alarming portrait of an ex-president. It is a warning for all of us to take Donald Trump seriously and literally when he talks about wanting to govern as a dictator.
What do you think? Do you think he's a fascist?
Well, I'm looking at the definition of fascism. It's a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy. So certainly, in my experience, those are the kind of things that he thinks would work better in terms of running America. You know, again, back to this issue of democracy is complicated, messy to operate. Probably the worst kind of government there is, except for all the other ones. I think Churchill once said that. And again, our Constitution, our founding is built in to the Constitution and to the way our government operates, built in a lot of checks and balances, and didn't design the government to be streamlined and whatnot. So, but certainly the former president is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure.
And these are Gold Star veterans and men of integrity and honesty, while MAGA politicians do backflips and pretzels to try to explain their way and defend the indefensible. It's rather quite offensive. Just as we've seen on full display tonight as Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, in a loud, alarming admission, and frankly not enough people are speaking about it. I'm going to play a clip on it though, because they said the part out loud as Trump repeated at least 3 separate times in a row that he and Mike Johnson had a secret that nobody knows about, their little secret that they'll unveil after the election. And a threatening, I'm almost certain, he's basically stating that if and when Kamala Harris wins, they're going to try to fight it, deny it. Mike Johnson was actually one of the architects of the January 6th election denial, and he was trying to not certify the fake electors and in that scandal. He was one of the architects of that. Let me go ahead and play this clip because it's rather disturbing.
First really weird thing that Donald Trump said to Mike Johnson right here.
And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
He is saying the quiet part out loud. He said, after the race, we may or may not let you know about our little secret in the House. Donald Trump is explicitly saying if he loses this race, they are once again going to try to challenge the results of our election, but this time there will be a Republican Speaker of the House to help Donald Trump go along with his plan. That should terrify us all. He is openly admitting it to it. He says it's our little secret, only we've talked about it. That is terrifying. How are more people not talking about this? Donald Trump is openly admitting what he wants to do. This should be terrifying to us all, and especially with the extreme language Donald Trump is talking about Mike Johnson with in this clip right here.
It's not easy when you have a majority of 3, but he's done a great job, and he's going to continue to do a great job, and we like him. He's a terrific person. I watched him just totally decapitate a fake reporter on NBC, Meet the Fake Press. What he did to her was... I think that probably she'll never be the same.
Now, we covered the interview on Meet the Press that Donald Trump is referring to with Mike Johnson, and I don't think he decapitated the reporter, which is some pretty deranged and extreme language to use about an interview. I remember it going something like Mike Johnson completely falling apart as his lies were exposed, but I know Donald Trump doesn't really have a great memory, not on up there at this point in time, but clearly Mike Johnson's brain isn't working too well either, because before we get to Melania, he said this during his speech.
We revere the founding principles. We revere our Judeo-Christian foundations. We revere individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law and peace through strength and fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity, secure borders.
The GOP is the party of law and order, you say. The party that is about to try to break our election laws again. The party that sent violent insurrectionists to the Capitol to attack police officers. And the party whose nominee has 34 felonies to his name. That's the party of law and order, Mike? Really? Are you serious? These people are a joke. They're hypocrites. They're ridiculous.
Yeah, so that is, again, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, which is the third most powerful position in our government. And it doesn't make any sense to me why he's even the Speaker of the House after he literally was helping plot a coup against our own government and overthrowing it. Which is why Trump's admission is particularly troubling, especially, the way he said it. It's definitely not anything good, I can tell you that. And Democrats have been preparing for exactly this as well, in case these kind of events happen, as people have even rumored that he was going to try to deny certification, or I don't know. Because Trump once again claimed false victory again on this rally. He claimed that they're ahead by a landslide, which currently the polls actually have Kamala ahead by 4 points in most of the polls. There's also reports out that the right-wing pollsters were flooding the polls to make their ratings seem a lot higher, basically to sow this distrust and doubt if they were to lose, or when they do lose. They hurled insults all night at key constituents by calling Puerto Rico trash and other derogatory terms. Just really rude and mean. I'll play the clip on it.
These are terrifying.
Absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay, we're getting there. No,
Who is that jackwad? Who is that guy?
Actually, I think that's Tony Hinchcliffe, which is super disappointing. I mean, I don't. He's a comedian. I don't
Yeah, but
follow
look,
this
Trump,
like
this
crew
issue
very
with Puerto
closely,
Rico
but
again. I saw it. This was when he went down after Helene, the horrific hurricane. People there, everybody coming together. We sent helicopters down from Minnesota and personnel. You know, this is how you do this during this. And in the first hours, Trump complaining about the response. Does anybody remember how he responded to Maria in Puerto Rico? It was absolutely horrific. Down there insulting people, throwing it. Look, I know that the folks who are on here today understand this. People in Puerto Rico are citizens. They pay taxes and they serve in the military at almost a higher rate than anybody else.
yeah, I mean, it's like super upsetting. Obviously, it's super upsetting to me. My family is from Puerto Rico. I'm Puerto Rican, and like the thing that is so messed up that I wish more people understood is that the things that they do in Puerto Rico are a testing ground for the policies and the horrors that they wish to and that they do unveil in working class communities across the United States. And I need people to understand that when you have some a-hole calling Puerto Rico floating garbage, know that that's what they think about you. That is exactly, like, that's just what they think about you. It's what they think about anyone who makes less money than them. It's what they think about the people who serve them food in a restaurant. It's what they think about the people who fold their clothes in a store. Like,
you're
dude,
right.
are you serious? Like, are you serious?
Yeah, the privilege of being on this campaign is traveling across the entire country. There are hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans across in battleground states that need to send them a message on this. I
want them to like
gotta vote.
Roll that. I want everyone in Philadelphia to see that clip. If you live in Philly, why don't you go and see that
Reading?
clip?
Yes.
If you live in Reading, Pennsylvania, which I was there, I was in Reading last week. If you're in Reading, if you're in Philly, look at that trash. Like, what is trash is people actually just thinking of other human beings that way. Are you actually for real? And the thing that gets me is that these people their entire lives rely on working class people. If you have someone that's not there to harvest the crops that show up in your grocery store, in your Erewhon or your Whole Foods or wherever it is that you go to eat, if you think lesser of working class Americans, of people who are...
Well, that probably didn't sit too well with one of the biggest Puerto Rican musical artists in the world, because Bad Bunny took to Instagram and shared this video with his 45 million followers.
I will never forget what Donald Trump did and what he did not do when Puerto Rico needed a caring and a competent leader. He abandoned the island, tried to block aid after back-to-back devastating hurricanes, and offered nothing more than paper towels and insults.
It would be difficult to properly convey the star power of this musical artist other than to say Taylor Swift for the Latino population. The same Latino population, by the way, that Trump is relying on to swing in his favor in this election. Well done, Donald. Well done. And it wasn't just Bad Bunny either. Luis Fonsi, who sings the hit song Despacito, posted this to his 16 million followers. Are you serious? And called it una falta de respeto, which means it's a lack of respect. And what's craziest is that Trump's campaign trotting out these racist assholes trashing Puerto Rico happened on the literal same day that Kamala Harris's campaign announced its plan to promote economic opportunities in Puerto Rico.
Trump continues his lie about the tariffs as if China will be paying for it or the foreign countries will be paying for it. And the president can't make any foreign country pay anything. This is a direct sales tax or a national sales tax of 10 to 20% national sales tax on everything, costing the average consumer, American consumer, up to $4,000 or more per year on the same products. Plus, inflation will skyrocket. And this is what top economists have said. It'll literally lead to a recession by the middle of next year. Trump's policies will also bankrupt Social Security. Within 4 to 6 years, Social Security will be bankrupt. The comedian at the rally attacked Puerto Rico as if, in a very degrading way. I'm glad that Kamala Harris actually released, just earlier that day, she had actually released her economic plan for Puerto Rico, ironically, which is pretty awesome. And she has a really detailed plan on how she is going to help their economy grow, and even some great policies at really helping to stimulate the economy overall and artists in Puerto Rico, investing in the infrastructure and more. Top economists, as well as Janet Yellen, have been sounding the alarms that Trump's fascist policies and tariffs will kill the economy and bring a collapse. A recession by the middle of next year, as I said earlier. Only Kamala has a plan that will help all Americans, not only to get by, but to get ahead. And I think this is important. As I've pointed out in some of my earlier videos, she has the $25,000 credit for first-time home buyers, a $6,000 tax credit for the first year of a child's life for the earned tax credit. And that, when they had enacted before, it was smaller, and it didn't go for the whole year, but it actually had cut childhood poverty in half. So they want to bring that back and make it bigger. Then we've got a $50,000 tax credit for small business startups, which is amazing. I know I myself am definitely wanting that. So many great announcements that she's spoke of. Unlike, Trump, he likes to say things that sound good, but when you really hold a magnifying glass up to it, or look at it, or even listen to him, he never explains how he's going to do any of it. It's never listed out. It's just broken promises that he never keeps. Trump and his oligarchs like Elon Musk have been pushing disinformation on his social media platform, deep fakes, and more, trying to buy the election with these lotteries that I'm pretty sure, as legal analysts have made note of, that it violates campaign finance laws. And the law that he broke actually holds up to 5 years in prison. So the RNC and right-wing pollsters, again, like I mentioned earlier, have been flooding the polls, trying to manipulate the numbers and make Trump's numbers seem greater than what they are, so they can sow distrust, on election day when he loses. The polls show, again, Kamala Harris is up by 4 points in all of the polls, and we're still working hard. We're not going to ever get comfortable. We have to keep making sure that everybody gets out to vote, because this election is very important. Dr. Phil was on stage tonight as well at this Nazi rally, and he was trying to explain to people why Trump was the victim, not the bully, and how Democrats were the bullies, and how Democrats are these big, powerful people that have all of this power and might, and Trump is not. It didn't make any sense, clearly. He also kept saying how celebrities don't belong or have any place in politics, as if trying to insult Kamala Harris's celebrity endorsements, etc. But he failed to consider the main reason why Trump is even given this opportunity to be president, and possibly even why he's popular amongst his cult and followers, was because he's literally been on TV and a celebrity, a D-list celebrity at that. I mean, I wouldn't really consider him an A-list celebrity, but he's been in our faces giving us his 2 cents his whole life, and it's always been negative and demeaning and just cruel and discriminatory. But he was famous from being on, back in the day, he was actually on an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith. He was on the movie Home Alone. He's been on Saturday Night Live. And then, of course, The Apprentice, where the CEOs of NBC actually let us know that they actually manipulated The Apprentice to make him look better because he was terrible at business in general and firing people, and he would fire the wrong people. So they would try to edit it to make those people look worse than they were, and just a mess. And then he was also on wrestling, where he wrestled in a fake wrestle, you know how real that is. He wrestled Vince McMahon at the opening of one of the wrestling matches, and so, you know, he's literally a celebrity. So, you know, if celebrities don't have any business in politics or don't know anything about it, then what is he doing in politics? Dr. Phil, I think you need to obviously tell this to Trump. Trump has been even more unhinged and low energy and boring as he's nearly 80 years old. At the age of 78, going on 79, he's mentally unraveling and possibly, sadly, even having early onset of dementia. Women are literally dying from Trump abortion bans across the nation, while he spins rhetoric that everybody wanted this. Nobody wanted this. It's literally a women's health crisis. Trump's dangerous rhetoric made the Trump presidency one of the most dangerous periods of American history, with more than 1,700 mass murders alone, and a record high of murder rates and crime. Meanwhile, have him tell it, and supposedly right now it's supposed to be dangerous. It's not. The crime is actually way down. It's been way safer. Plus, the rhetoric's been cooled down until he's gotten back on this political, you know, basically, if he would just go away and do his time, or, you know, retire, the whole country would cool down. But honestly, he's never going to shut. He's always going to be calling into Fox News and giving his 2 cents, unless he's sitting in a jail cell, or even then, he'll be calling in from, they'll be answering his 800 number calls. I mean, come on now. Unless he's in the hole. I wanted to show, Detroit actually made an ad as well in response to Trump's disrespectful bashes on the city when he was actually in Michigan. He was insulting the city of Detroit, and I want to play this clip because this ad, I really like this ad.
We were dead.
Detroit waving the white flag.
They said we were dead.
Detroit waving the white flag. The city filing for bankruptcy.
That our best days were behind us. That living here is like
living in hell.
But you know what we said? We said, that. We rebuilt ourselves. We looked out for each other, got our hands dirty, and put in the hard work. And this guy, he don't know anything about that. We are a city of winners, of up-and-comers, of builders, the Motor City. Bigger and better. Here, we believe in freedom. We don't bow down to nobody, and we never will. And so what Donald Trump doesn't understand, or care to learn, is that when he said,
our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president,
that he should be so goddamn lucky.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
I like that. And before I close this video, I want to show the ad for the Harris campaign as well. Another new ad that I believe the Lincoln Project actually made. And it shows a warning from Trump's administration. It's a pretty powerful video. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Okay. Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it. And thank you for watching it all the way through. If you could drop a smiley face in the comments so I know that you watched it all the way to the end, I would appreciate it. And I try to respond to my comments and stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And please, please, please don't forget to like my video, share it with all your friends, share it in the groups, share it wherever you can. We've got to get these videos out to the masses before people go and vote. I know a lot of people have already voted, but it's important, especially if there's anybody that's still on the fence, which I don't know how you could be when the contrasts between the two couldn't be more stark. So again, I appreciate all of your support, and thank you for watching my video. And again, subscribe if you haven't already. Check that bell for all my latest updates. Thank you. Have a good day.
Or paid about $927 a month for groceries. At the height of inflation in 2022, the average was $1,307 a month. That's $400 more a month. Now, that has started to come down, actually, in real terms. The average at the end of last year was around $1,261, but again, still up from 2020. And the experience of paying more and more and feeling like prices are out of control and feeling squeezed translates to disaffection. And that disaffection is probably the single biggest advantage you can have as, say, the challenger to an incumbent president operating in a world in which prices have gone. And yet, the Republican challenger, President Biden, isn't running on lowering prices. He's actually running on jacking up prices on a huge amount of the goods we use every day. And I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but genuinely, and I want to be clear here, his core economic policy proposal right now is an across-the-board consumer sales tax for every single good imported into the United States. Now, he may call it a tariff, but it will just be passed along to consumers in a sales tax on every single good that is imported. And again, you do not need to take my word for it. Just listen to Donald Trump himself.
Number one, I think we should have a ring around the collar, as they say. I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically let's say a 10% tax.
I'm a big believer in tariffs for two reasons. Number one, I fully believe in them economically when you're being taken advantage of by other countries. I would say to China, if you're building a plant on our border to build cars in Mexico and to sell them into the United States, I'm putting a 50% tariff on all those cars.
You used tariffs and sanctions against China.
I did, and I did very well with it. As you know, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes through the taxes and tariffs.
Is that what you want to do again?
Well, you have to do it.
Okay, if you are a single issue inflation voter, there is only one candidate who wants to put a 10% tax that will be passed along to consumers as a sales tax on every single good that's imported. And here's the thing, this is not a hypothetical. Trump did a miniature version of this the last time he was president when he put tariffs on different Chinese goods. Here's how that worked out. According to analysis by the New York Fed, the average import tariff rate more than doubled in 2018 alone. It tangibly led to higher domestic consumer prices. Take the first two tariffs on washing machines and steel. Economists found that consumer prices for washing machines, which have been going down steadily since 2012, almost immediately jumped back up after Trump's tariffs. In fact, the New York Times found that the washer-specific tariffs raised costs for importers like LG and Samsung. The steel import tariffs raised costs for some domestic manufacturers like Whirlpool, pushing prices up for consumers. Now Trump wants to do it again, but bigger, okay? Now, American manufacturing, there's some argument on the other side of it, but in the short term,